Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Jamie Photography. So in this video, I'm going to take this picture I took in Kinderdijk in the Netherlands, in Holland, which was a beautiful morning. The sun was just about to come up, and so what I tried to do was shoot for the highlights, try to get the color there. Perfectly calm water, which was lovely. So I had it on a tripod, had the camera on a tripod. I shot, as you can see, 2 seconds at f11 ISO 100. Try and keep the noise level as low as possible. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a relatively straightforward process. We'll need to remove the electrical towers in the distance there, but I will work through with relatively basic tools to show you how we can prepare an image from a reasonably good shot into a really nice shot. And what I will like to do here is I'm probably going to add the sun into the scene as well, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remove these power lines you can see in the distance, and to do that the best place to go really is into Photoshop. But before I do that, I want to brighten the scene up a little bit by about 1.5 stops. There we go, so I can see them more clearly. And also you know, that allows me to actually get a clear idea of what needs to be removed. But also there are some dust marks, that obviously dust on the sensor. So before I jump over into Photoshop, I'm just going to go into the healing tool here, and then I'm going to, when you've clicked the healing tool and it's illuminated, what you'll find down in the bottom left here, there's a little section called Visualize Spots, and if you tick that, what it will do is it will turn the image into almost a negative. And what it does is it emphasizes any discrepancies. And you can see now there's a dust particle here. Can you see that? Just there's a dust particle there. There's another one over here. And there's a couple in the sky. So whilst I'm in the healing brush tool now, I'm just going to make sure the brush is slightly bigger than the actual dust mark. And I'm going to make sure the feather is at 100%, occupancy is at 100%. So then I'm just going to go around clicking on these to remove the dust particles. And if it's a little bit longer, you can just stretch it out a little bit, draw a slightly longer line if you see that there's one or more in there. So I think that's all of the dust particles that I can see. So I'm going to click the healing tool, come back out of that. Yep, that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to jump over into Photoshop. So I do that by going right clicking on the image, go to edit in, and then edit in Adobe Photoshop 2023. And that will take us into Photoshop. Of course, this is a DNG file, so this is a raw file and gives us a lot more dynamic range to work with than a JPEG. Always important that you shoot in RAW if you're going to post-process your images. If you're not going to post-process your images, then shoot in JPEG, because the camera will do a relatively good job at finding the right levels for exposure and color and white balance, etc., etc. And as a result, you'll end up with a reasonably good picture, but you won't be able to do much editing on it because the dynamic range changes from 14 or 16-bit, which is millions of colors, down to JPEG being 8-bit, which is actually 256 colors per shade. So let's have a go then. So first thing I want to do is take these pylons out. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to use the Option or Alt key and then wheel my mouse so I can move in, so you can see there that the pylon is quite clear. I'm going to go to the Spot Healing Brush tool. It's a nice, easy tool to use, and I'm just going to try and for the moment just paint out the main part of the tower here. There we go. Make the brush a little bit smaller, and then I can click and then hold down the Shift key and click again to do straight lines to remove the remaining part of the power lines that are there. So let's get those in there. That's it. It's a good way of doing it. There is another way. If you've got large areas you want to deal with like this, what you can do is you can go down to the patch tool, click on the patch tool. If it's not in your toolbar here, if you right click on the Spot Healing Brush tool, you'll find there'll be additional options. I separate them out because I tend to use them more often. So what you do is you draw around the bit that you want to get rid of, as simple as that, and then you just drag this away, and then let go. And what it does, if I use Command D or Control D, it does an approximation to remove the cables. So I'm just going to undo that, because the color here is quite a bit darker over this way. So just seeing if there's anywhere else I can use. So in this case, it doesn't look very good at all. So we're going to go back into the patch tool, and I'm just going to remove. I'm going to come over this side. That looks a bit better. Then same again. I'm just going to go down to the patch tool there, and I'm just going to take part of it there. That looks okay. Now I think I did see some pylons in the distance. I did indeed. So back to the healing brush tool, and just go in there and take these towers out. There we go. For some reason it's keeping the power lines in there when it's doing the heal. And then this one in the distance here. That one got rid of that one quite well. And that one, yep, looking pretty good. So literally just paint in there and draw them out, and hopefully. And it's quite an interesting place, Kinderdijk. It's a World Heritage Site in the Netherlands, and there are in fact 17 of these windmills and they pump water basically from one dike to another. And what you find is that there are like lagoons, and the windmills used to pump from one lagoon to the next. Today it's all done electrically. There are electric pumps nowadays, but obviously back in the day, that's how it was done. They used the windmills, and as you say, there's 17 windmills here. So they were obviously moving an awful lot of water back in the day. Just get that one as well. Good. Right. I think there's anything else. I think there's a couple of little branches down in this bottom left corner. Just saw when I was visualizing the dust particles. So just taking those out. Yep. And I think we are good. So I'm going to send this back to Lightroom. To do that, I'm going to click on File, going to go to Close, and then I'm going to go to Save. Don't do File Save or File Save As, because it won't put it back in Lightroom. It will put it back in the same folder, but then you'll need to resynchronize your Lightroom to find it, which is easy enough to do. Let me just quickly show you. You go back into Library, you find which folder you were in, you right click on the folder, okay, and then you just go down to Synchronize folder here, and then it will tell you how many pictures are in this folder that aren't recognized by Lightroom. So it will say like 1 here, for example, and then you just click Synchronize, and it will put it back into your Lightroom library. So little quick tip there. So having come back from Photoshop, it's come back as a TIFF because that's the setting I have. So we're still maintaining the dynamic range. The dynamic range in this case is for a TIFF is 16-bit. So again, 16.9 billion colors, million colors, something like that. Crazy number of colors. That's what you get. I do notice there's a little blemish in the sky there. We can change to instead of using the content aware removal, we can use the heal tool. So we'll click on heal tool and see if we can heal it. And let's have a look at that. And that's much better. So moving from the content aware to the heal has solved that particular problem. So okay, that's good. Right, now we're going to actually do the process on the image. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight away into the masks. I'm going to select a radial gradient, and I'm just going to bring in from the top. Sorry, I'm not going to select radial gradient, apologies. I'm going to select a linear gradient, and what I'm going to do is just come in from the top, and I'm going to bring it down slightly off angle, so that we're getting the 100% of the gradient in the top left and 0 gradient at the bottom line, and then I'm just going to darken that top left corner slightly, and I'm going to add a little bit more blue to the sky over there, because what we want to try to do is create a transfer of color from left to right. And as in with the color wheel, if you look at the color wheel, it shows you what is opposite blue is oranges and yellows. So what we will do is we will create another mask, do another linear gradient, and come from the bottom left, slightly more of an angle, and then I'm just going to boost that color to a little bit more coming on that side, not too much, a little bit of magenta as well, just to balance it. That's good stuff. Now, going to create another mask, take another linear gradient, and do a straight down top to bottom as such. And I'm going to boost the temperature, and I'm going to boost the saturation. So I'm doing nothing more than that, just bring that up a little bit in terms of the color that's in the sky there. And I'm going to add some contrast, not too much, and I'm going to put in some clarity. Clarity always helps, brings the sky alive. That works quite well. Now, I need to do the same for the bottom, but of course a water reflection normally transfers about 20 to 25% less light than you're getting from the sky. So what we want to do is try and boost that to balance it. So I'm going to create another mask, another linear gradient, and do the same again, straight up from the bottom. Right, and this time I'm going to boost the exposure to bring it up closer. I'm going to boost the temp as I did in the sky, and I'm going to boost the saturation just a little bit, and I'm going to add some contrast, and I'm going to add some clarity, not too much. So we're trying to balance that light, so it's still slightly less, but it's much closer to where we want to be. So that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to come out of mask for a second here, and I'm just going to look at maybe cropping the image slightly differently. I'd like to see this windmill here on the rule of thirds line. So I'm just going to select a pano, maybe a 1610. No, maybe I go to 4:3, and then move this over to here. Here we go. Press enter. Yeah, that's nice. So that's giving me the balance, and with the windmills falling away into the distance, that works very, very well. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just add a little bit more light to the center of the scene, because we're going to put a sun probably somewhere between these two, because this is where the sun came up later. But when the sun comes up, you get so much contrast in the shot that it's very difficult, unless you do an HDR and then try to manage the image. It's very difficult to actually balance the sun. So I like to add one, and I'll show you how I do that. But I'm going to go back into masks. I'm going to create a new mask. I'm going to take a radial gradient this time. I'm going to put quite a large one across the center here, and I'm just going to boost the exposure, not too much, just a little bit. Going to boost the temp in the center there, again, not too much, a little bit of magenta, add some contrast in there, and I'm just going to put a little bit of clarity in the center there. That will boost these windmills. But what I am going to do is I'm going to subtract. Okay, I don't want the windmills lit. I want to keep them as shadow. So I'm going to subtract the sky, but then do the inverse of the sky, and you'll find a little tick box over here. You'll find a little tick box when you've selected sky to say invert, and that effectively will take away this radial gradient from the actual excuse me, from the actual windmill itself. I'm going to right click that. I'm going to duplicate the radial gradient. I'm going to pull it down here. There we go. I'm going to boost that I'm going to thin him down just a little bit, and I'm going to boost him just a little bit more. That's fine. Great. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to put a sun in here. But just before I do that, I want to make sure the whole image is balanced. So I'm going to go back to the basics. I'm outside of the masks now. I'm going to go back to the basics. I'm going to bring down the highlights just a little bit there. Bring up the exposure just to compensate. So we get a little bit more from the sky. Open the shadows just a tiny bit, not too much. And then I'm going to have a look with my whites to see where we sit with the white. And again, I don't want to go too high, so I'm going about to plus 20 there. And the blacks I just want to bring down a little bit because I want to maintain these shadows. If I hold down the Option or Alt key when I move the white or black sliders, you will see where you know, in the case of the blacks, I can have no black there, or I can have almost full black on that windmill. So I'm going to go about there. That looks about right. That's pretty good. I'm going to bring up clarity on the whole scene just a little bit, not too much. And I'm going to lose a little bit of texture, just a tiny bit, come down, just to soften the image slightly. Going to give it a little bit more vibrance. There we go. That looks lovely now. And a little bit of saturation just to bring those colours alive. That's great. So to put a sun into this scene, we're going to go back to mask. We're going to create a mask, take a radial gradient, okay, and I'm going to put a radial gradient in the sky in the center of these two windmills here, and I'm just going to boost the exposure so the sky is actually much brighter in that point. Just going to add a little bit of color, not too much. You see how we've done that there? And then I'm going to duplicate this radial gradient, and then I'm going to place that in the center and make it smaller, this one, to come down to a round disc that would be the size of the sun. So let's say about there, and I'm just gonna boost that a little bit more. So you're just starting to see the sun in the center there. Then I'm going to go to create a new mask, another radial gradient. And this time I'm over here. I'm just going to make sure I've got my sun perfectly round. There we go. Happy with that. And I'm going to take that, just get that nice and round. And I'm going to take that and place that exactly where I want the sun to be. And now I'm going to bring up that exposure to create a disc. Can you see there that we actually can now create the look of the sun coming up? I think the previous mask needs to be just a bit brighter. So I'm just going to bring that up a little bit more. There we go. So you're getting this sort of sun effect in the sky. Now, of course, all of this needs to be duplicated down here in the water. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just right click on that, duplicate the mask. I'm going to take that, just take him out the way for a second, just make him bigger and take him out the way. There we go. And I also want to duplicate the this mask here as well. So I've got that one as well. So just make that one bigger. So what we've got is let me just come away from masks so you can see we've got the sun in the sky with the brightness there. In fact, I might want to extend that brightness just a little bit more to the left and to the right. So I'm going to go back to this one here. Sorry, the one above it, this one, yeah. And there's the mask. Let's just move the sun out of the way for a moment. Just move that out of the way. Go back to this one. I want to go just make this a bit wider. There we go. And then I'm going to pop that one back in. A little bit bigger there. Pop that back in there. And then I'm going to take the sun and pop him back on the center spot. So if I just come away from masks just for a second, you can see we've got the sun in the shot there. So we've copied these two masks here. They're down the bottom here. So we can pop these in. So I'm going to take this one. I'm going to put it roughly in the same area as you can see there. And I'm just going to drag that out like I did similar to the one above, so that we've got this duplication, just slight angle there. Now it's a bit too bright because it shouldn't be as bright as the sky because of the reflection level. So I'm just going to just drop him back slightly. There we go. And then of course we've got the sun one. Now this one's interesting. How you use this is a little bit different because the sun's in the center. One of the things that we need to do is actually make him slightly wider than the sun that we had above, and we need to draw him out quite a bit. Because if you have a look, I'll just drop that brightness, it's a bit too bright. So what happens is when you get a reflection off of water, it diffracts off the surface of the water and it elongates, it creates sort of extended reflection. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here like this, so you can see that we're getting that reflection in the water. It's a bit bright at the moment. just like that. Yeah. So that might be enough. I may need one more in the center of this. I'm just going to come away and just sit for a second. You see how natural looking that sun is, even when we zoom right in. Of course, if you're going to blow something up quite large, you want to be sure that it looks good when you zoomed in. So that is now, I've looked at that for a little bit, is a bit bright. So I'm going to go back into my masks here, and I'm going to pick the mask that is the one on the top there. I'm just going to drop that down just a little bit further. So just a little bit further like that. Now what we can do is create one last radial gradient here. I'm just going to put it over this side, quite a thin, long one, like that. I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit closer. And I'm going to take that and put it right in the center of this one again. Now, and I'll zoom back out so we can see what it looks like. And I'm going to just add a little bit more brightness just in that center line. So you almost get like a cross in the diffraction. Let's come out of the masks. And there we go. You're sat there with a sun reflection. And I think that works really, really well. I'm conscious at the top here. I might want to darken this down just a little bit more. Sometimes I would use a post-process vignette to just darken down the corners, but the bottom corners are already quite dark. So I'm just going to go back into the masks. I'm going to take another linear gradient from the top, just take the top as such, and then just darken that down just a little bit more. There we go. And maybe add just a little bit more blue into there. Tiny bit darker, just to balance the top and the bottom together. A bit too dark. Come back up a little bit. There we go. And I think we have a finished image. So hopefully that was pretty straightforward. Just trying to balance the light. It's all about light at the end of the day. You know, when the sun comes up, it gives you exactly that same look. And the honest truth is, the reason why I've done this is because the position I was at on a small piece of land that was in the middle of the dike, I couldn't move left or right, and the sun actually came up slightly behind the main windmill. So it was a bit of a disappointment, because to get from there out back to the other part of the dike would have taken about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, so by which time we would have missed that golden moment. So I do have an app which tells me where the sun came up, and I was looking at it and it looked like it was going to come up in the position that I've now painted it, but it was slightly off to one side. So maybe time to look at another app. So hopefully that was useful. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really love you to give me a like. It really helps. And if you enjoy what I'm doing with YouTube and you know, following the adventure that I'm having, because it's great fun, I can tell you I'm having great fun with this, please subscribe, and we can build this channel, and I can travel more and see more and do more and try to help you guys learn a little bit more. So as I say, this was a little bit more simple, straightforward process, not using too many of the modules on the right hand side. Conscious that a lot of my videos have been quite long. So if you did like it, let me know. All right, so for now, bye bye.